Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. Lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, the loving light will guide you.
Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world, and welcome to tonight's live stream. And it's a very, very important topic we are discussing. But before we get into it, happy birthday to John Moslin, and may he have many, many more. Now, everyone in South Africa is talking about Eskom, and will it or won't the grid collapse? And if it does, what are the ramifications on the country? Let's hear what Julius Malema has to say about this in a recent interview with the BBC's Hard Talk. Here we go.
Has been resurfaced to support a certain narrative. There's no such a thing. I'm telling you, there's going to be a revolution. Let the grid collapse, and let's see what's going to happen.
Let the grid collapse.
I'm saying to you.
What do you think South Africans are going to feel hearing you say that? People who are losing their jobs, people who have no income.
You are misinterpreting me. I'm saying to you, let the grid collapse as it is going to happen, and see what's going to happen in this country. I'm not wishing it. I'm saying it's going to happen, and you will see what's going to happen. Do you think that once the grid collapse, people are going to exchange roses with government? People are going to rise, and when they rise, there will not be any leader who will be leading them. There will be leaderless, there will be anarchy, there will be looting all over this country, because nothing will be working. So if you think that I was bluffing on the 20th of March, I was just saying to this government and the people of South Africa, something ought to be done to avoid what is possible.
Now I think you get the message there. That's Malema talking about Eskom. And as I said, everybody's talking about Eskom. Now, tonight, I'm speaking to Rodney Genricks, who has developed a simple, inexpensive, bio-friendly solution to keeping the water in the power station's cooling towers clean while minimizing corrosion and environmental damage. A large part of the issue leading to load shedding can be found in the current management and maintenance of water being used in the power stations. The chemical techniques used are over 50 years old, expensive, corrosive, and highly damaging to the environment. Vested interests at Eskom are blocking Rodney from presenting his comparably inexpensive, efficient, and bio-friendly technology from being even trialled at an Eskom power plant, while South Africa sits in growing darkness. I'll get my guest on so that he can explain to us exactly how this all works. Let's cross to Rodney. Here we go. Hi Rodney, good to see you back again.
Hi Scott, yes, it's nice to be back on your channel and sharing some of interesting views to our viewers out there as to what is actually going on with our water in South Africa and our load shedding and various other situations related to water.
Now, there's no hotter topic right now than Eskom and load shedding, and clearly water cooling in these power stations is a huge part of the process, isn't it?
Yes, it's definitely, Scott. And unfortunately, the focus is not on is more on the consequences than on actual causes. Now, the consequences is corruption. We hear about it every day on the radio. We hear about the coal. We hear about all the failures and the transformers blowing up, etc. But nobody actually is talking about what is causing all these things inside the power stations. And this has been going on for a long time. And it's basically water. Water is one of the biggest problems that we have at our power stations. And that is what I'd like to talk to the viewers about.
Okay, look, we've got a PowerPoint presentation that we're going to be looking at with a couple of videos attached before we get into the general discussion. I'm going to share that with the audience now. And what I'd like you to do is to just take us through what this is all about. Here we go. So we've got the Loving Life Community Channel discussion, 25th of May. Now, Eskom failures in acid mine drainage.
Yeah, you see, in this video that you are watching now is basically a footage that I've done, and we will elaborate on it further on. But this is the continual process and applying chemicals to kill off algae which is forming within the cooling stations. They're putting in toxic chemicals that are killing off our birds. Even the people that I went to and filmed would not eat anywhere near any of the water because of the toxicity of it. And that becomes a very real problem. So the picture on the right hand side is of some of the dead birds that we've taken out the bottom of these cooling towers, and there's some of the chemicals that are put in, and it says right at the bottom, extremely hazardous and deadly to and toxic to aquatic organisms. And that's on the MSDS, on the Material Safety Data Sheet. It's warning before it's even applied, this is highly toxic stuff. And this is what keeps being put into our power stations. And that is just from an environmental point of view, never mind the corrosive point of view. And I'll show the corrosion just now. But this video is basically just taking a quick run through of the process of this toxicity and the hazardous identification of many of, and this is only a few of the number of poisonous chemicals being poured into our power stations.
Wow. Well, let me play that short video clip, and I'll let you know once it's completed. Here we go.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm playing the video clip. Okay, I can see the cooling towers of the water coming down. Now we got the graphics. buffer zones, retention zones, inorganic zone. But we'll be talking about this in a second, but it gives an overview.
Okay.
Okay. All right, that's that little video clip. Okay, I'm just going to chop that one off. Okay, so let's move to the next screen. So this is
Yeah,
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is the acid mine drainage water, which is very similar to what is coming out of our power stations. And the process to remediate this is normally a liming station adding lime or something to try and balance the pH, but that does nothing to resolve the actual issue of the water, which is your reoxygenation and your removal of toxic chemicals.
Yeah.
And on the right, you can actually see both power stations and also other dams that are being contaminated completely. And these areas have got not a living organism in them.
Wow.
And these processes that have been put in, they've been put in for years. They never work, and yet they continue funding failure instead of acknowledging what is the problem, looking at it, looking at something new. When it works, all of a sudden it gets blocked. And this is where the problem lies. Funding failure seems to be the norm in South Africa, because when you put a solution on it, which is a biological as opposed to a chemical solution, there is an immediate block. Now, the biological solutions are a fraction of the cost of a chemical process, which is not a solution, and has failed for the last 50, 80 years. So it's not even really a political issue, except when they endorse what is already failing. And this is what's happening. We are having an endorsement of failures and a refunding of these failures. And so there is no excuse for the situation we find our power stations in, or we find our water situation in right now, because it is only can only be vested interest. There is no other reason for it.
So what you're saying in effect is that there are people who are doing very, very nicely out of the current status quo, even if it's not in the best interests of people in South Africa.
Well, that's exactly what it is, and we are starting to see the effects of that downstream. Hartbeespoort Dam.
Yeah.
We're looking at all the people dying and of cholera, etc. right now. And
how much crime? Wow.
Yeah, that's right. Hammanskraal as well. Hammanskraal I've been dealing with for a long time, and we've been down there. And we can talk about that afterwards. But I've done a lot of work in that whole area, and that's on it. I think we can chat in that in the discussion now. I just want to show just why we haven't got electricity, and why and what is the causes of this.
Yeah. Let me show you that short video clip that you've got. I'll let you know when it's finished. Here we go.
Okay.
Okay, so what we had there was a comment right at the end saying absolutely spot on.
Yes, I'm just trying to think which is this? Yeah, well, that's
that's a water at the top. Yeah,
that's right. The video that is actually an agitator or an aerator which pumps and puts the lime in there, and it's a liming station, and puts all this lime into this water to get the pH right. But what that happens then is this here then goes into a dam, and it settles on the bottom, and eventually these dams fill up with lime, and they just continue to contaminate. And so that is what I was actually referring to is spot on, which is the pipe in the middle going towards the back at the liming station, which we put in, and in order to change it, to convert this from a chemical to a biological process.
Right.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Look, it sounds the only way to go. Let's go to the next screen.
Yeah.
Okay. Understanding
Yeah,
water.
That's correct. You see, a chemical solution is basically based on poisons, chlorine, flocculants, coagulants, enzymes, and anaerobic bacteria with aeration. But it's basically a flocculation process where everything is dropped to the bottom, and eventually everything fills up. So you've got a compacted muck at the bottom, and that has to be dug out with excavators and dumped at a huge expense, while you have your noxious odors just increasing with together with the coliform level. So you're actually creating a toxic mess through the process of chemical solutions, as opposed to the biological solutions where you're doing it exactly the opposite. You're actually putting oxygen-based bacteria in, which is an aerobic system, and we digest all the organic material, which is about 90-95% of the suspended solids. So you only have a very, very small amount of inorganics that drop to the bottom. So that is the difference between the chemical and the biological. Now, biological science is basically being ignored in our water systems, and chemical solutions where people have invested huge sums of money, chlorcorp, and where they're pouring in chlorine which doesn't work, it cannot clean dirty water, and so on and so forth. So we have a huge amount over the last 50 years of a massive amount of vested interest in chemical solutions. So when one comes with an alternative biological solution, which is proven to work, it is being blocked in every form to protect those people from their vested interests, and that is where our problems with our water lies.
And from the way I understand it, it's actually not specifically the ANC who are involved in that blocking, but another community who traditionally have had control over this aspect of Eskom.
That's right. I think you've got to understand. I mean, this didn't start in '94. This started well before '94.
Yeah.
It's going on for many years. The only difference is that the corruption now is so rife within this situation. As people continue to protect their rights, corruption grows, and so we are. So South Africa has been asked to lay out trillions of rand to upgrade failed processes. They've got no chance of succeeding. And so why do we need that when we don't need that money at all? We've got so much infrastructure that can be utilized without any big spends at all. So this whole trillion rand loans and things like that is landing up on the taxpayer's doorstep, which is totally unnecessary. And that is all proven.
And it's keeping the establishment involved in this doing very well.
Absolutely. I mean, that's this goes deep. This is not just the ANC. This is much deeper than that.
Yeah. Look, I understand. We won't go into which group it is because I have a very good understanding of that. We've been talking about that group in other areas in South Africa. It's shocking that this is happening, especially when they're doing this to their own community. Okay, so is there anything else you'd like to add to that image?
No, I don't think so, Scott. It's just that people must understand there's a definite one difference between the two.
Yeah.
One, everything flocculates to the bottom. Biological solutions with oxygenation comes to the surface.
Yeah.
One digests all the stuff, all the muck, and the other one compounds the problem.
Yeah, we actually talked about this in some detail when it came to the water hyacinth at Harties in our earlier live stream. So I'll put a link down below this video to that one so people can have a look at that. Because you explain that in some detail.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Let's go to the next screen.
Yeah, this was an interesting challenge that we had, and coming back from the very first video that we showed. On the left is the cooling tower and how the algae grows onto these cooling towers. And in these cooling towers, the algae sometimes, it's literally tons of it. And in one instance, a whole cooling tower collapsed because of the weight and the underlining of the algae, where it actually grew into the walls and eroded the cooling tower. In the middle is a simple plant that we developed and installed at Kriel Power Station because of the blowing up of the transformers and all that oil going underground and contaminating our underground water. We pump that water up into the tanks, and from there it is all gravity fed, so there's no electricity required except for to pump the oil out of the underground. And on the right hand side is those same cooling towers that you can see on the left, but there's no sludge left, there's no algae, there is absolutely nothing. Now, people get contracts of 2 million, sometimes once a year, sometimes twice a year, to go and actually high pressure and try and clean the algae off and dig all this sludge out that forms at the bottom. And there's a huge amount of money spent, and when these block, they've got to close down a power station. So the power station suddenly loses, I don't know, 2-3 weeks or something to clean out that cooling tower, when it is totally unnecessary, and that's all because of the current processes that they're using, which are failing, and people are objecting to it because all of a sudden the contract for a couple of million rand each time to clean a cooling tower falls away. So I think Professor, when I did a talk the other day, put it in context, and he said, you know what, we know your project, we know what you're doing is working, we know exactly that, but what happens to all the contractors who have got huge contracts to clean all these power stations?
So
the fact that they're breaking.
Once again, we're talking about vested interests.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, and this is while South Africa is suffering from increasing load shedding. People are freezing in their beds, and yet, despite all that, they're continuing to use old techniques which are so far outdated, and you've got a biological option which would actually remove 90% of the problem.
Well, that's right. You know, the destruction of our infrastructure is caused by this old processing. You know, upgrading failed systems. I mean, it takes years and years and years, and at the same time as you're upgrading, so we are collapsing it. And you know, just there's no sense, there's no brain power behind this. This is just ridiculous.
Well, let me give you this analogy. I mean, back in I was involved in computer marketing back in late 1980s, and back then you didn't have Windows. You had the old, basically you had a C prompt that came up, and you typed in a name, and you went into a database. There was no graphics, there was no images, and today we've now got these super duper computers that do everything. We can watch YouTube, we can do whatever we want to do. What you're saying here is that the technology they're using to actually keep the power stations going dates back to when the IBM computers were still using the old DOS system, pre-Windows, pre-graphics.
Yeah, basically, I mean, it goes back 50 years.
That's exactly what I'm talking about, yeah. So why are they not revolutionizing their bloody way of doing things when every single minister, every single member of parliament has got a computer that's got Windows, it's got graphics, it's got internet access? If they had one of those old computers which had nothing but a C prompt, let's see how far they would go.
Yeah. Look, I mean, you know, and the other thing is the water usage. You know, if you take a single power station, use a huge amount of water, and so built near rivers or special holding dams are built to accommodate this usage. You know, approximately there's 1.4 liters are used to produce 1 kilowatt hour of electricity put into concept, Eskom uses about 320,000 megalitres per annum. Now, if one understands that volume and to try and get a concept of what we're talking about here, is that one large power station uses about half the water from the whole of Gauteng. That's Gauteng, that includes Joburg, Benoni, Boksburg, Edenvale, whatever. That's just one power station uses all that water.
Wow.
Now what we've got at the moment, we've got a situation whereby we have a power station, Kelvin Power Station, which is right in the middle of in Joburg, just off in Edenvale, and they are supposed to be supplied water from Northern Works. Now Northern Works has failed, and has failed for years. So all that water that should be used at the power station cannot be used because it's so badly contaminated. So even more of our clean water that we should be giving to people to drink is actually powered or used in that power station. So that just gives you an idea of what wasteful expenditure is and waste of water is, where our drinking water is being used to power a electricity power plant, which we desperately need.
Yeah.
But because of the failure of a power station, of a sewage works, they can't use that water as is. It is just. I mean, it's crazy. And so we, at one stage, I know they were wanting to close it down because of the amount of fresh water it's using. That we are spending all this money in cleaning.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go to the next screen.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I also on our previous one, I explained just briefly what biological remediation process is, and it's basically, just to go through again, it's just it's a bacteria, and there are specific bacteria that are targeting specific organic matter, and that bacteria then gives off an enzyme. This is a protein-based enzyme, and they then break down the sugars, starch, fats, and oils and greases, and they're able to digest it. Then the bacteria, obviously, they grow and they excrete CO2 and water, which is your carbon dioxide, and then the bacteria keep on producing, and so the process just goes on and on and on. And all this work that we've done in processing this and making it work, whereas a chemical enzyme does not target or does not allow anything to actually digest it, but it just rather breaks down the molecular structure or the organic matter and drops it to the basis. Now all our work, which has been over 14 years of proof of concept of power stations, water at sewage works, we've done a number of sewage works. We're currently busy with the sewage works right now. We've done all sorts of things, and that is all handed over and signed over by the Department of Water and Science and Technology. So there is no excuse to say it doesn't work. It has 14 years of research and been checked. So there's no reason for it not to be used, especially when I estimate we will save at least 2/3 of the cost of our water remediation.
Now, we've got a new Minister of Eskom in South Africa. Have you been able to contact him at all?
No, I've not been able to contact anybody. In fact, I get blocked. I get blocked by SABC, by the news, by TV. When I get blocked, when I phone and I've made contact with Radio Sondergrense, I was told that, sorry, they have a water expert, and that's the only person they're prepared to listen to, and so it goes on and on and on. It doesn't matter who you talk to, you get blocked. So you've got a captured broadcasting situation where TV are pushing certain specifics, and it's, oh crikey, look at this, we just suddenly got this problem at Hammanskraal. Well, that's nonsense. The problem at Hammanskraal is not you. I've worked down there at Hammanskraal. I've helped farmers. One farmer in particular, I went and I got a phone call on a Saturday night, please can I help this farmer? And I went down there with Gordon, who actually works with me, and we shot down there on a Sunday morning early, and I went and I stopped at his house, and I said to his wife, where's your husband? He says, no, he's over there by the dam, he's already done. So I went down to the dam and we walked through the reeds, and I found him actually sitting on his dam wall crying. And when you see a 71-man crying, he's a third or fifth generation farmer in that area. And then you know the extent of the problem. And he is just below the Royal sewage works. Now when I spoke to the guy, I said, now what is the problem? He says, no, my pumps, my centre pivots are all blocked, and I can't anymore. I get all the sewage water in, and you can smell it, everything's blocked. So I said, look, go back to your wife, go and have breakfast, relax, and we'll sort it out for you. So we started treating and dosing that, and we sorted it out. And I said the next morning, I went back to him. I said, look, don't do anything, but tomorrow morning start your pump and then phone me. And the next morning we finally started the pump and everything started working. We managed to save his crop. Now that crop would have put him under. Now subsequent to that, he's actually taken the Department of Water, and he was suing the various people getting ready to go to court. And what do? They knew about it, they know about me, they know exactly what I did. I've spoken to them about it. They send in tractors, and they send in trucks and excavators and everything like that to do the same job. Now that cost of doing that is about 5 times the cost that I would have charged. I mean, I think we charged 17,000 or something to fix his damages to clean it.
Yeah.
And these, what does it cost for trucks and and excavators and all the rest to come through and do it? There's simply no comparison in cost, or even the results thereof, because they're still sitting with the sludge. And all they did is they dropped it on to his next door neighbour, whose dam also filled up. Now instead of him being able to have 3 centre pivots going down, I think he's only got 2 centre pivots, and then he phones me. Now it causes bad blood between those 2 farmers. One's crossed with the other one now, but what they've done is avoided a court case. Now the other farmer below is going to start the whole process over again, which might cost another 3 years and millions of rand that the farmer doesn't have. So they are set in a situation where this is happening in so many instances where consequences are simply transferred into another place, and nothing is done about it.
And again, this is vested interest.
Well, there can be no other reason for it.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next screen.
This is an interesting. This is a very interesting one, because this shows you inside a boiler, inside the cooling towers, and you can see the little pipes on the right hand side, lower down, and on the left hand side as well. You can see the pipes are all blocked, and this is due to, first of all, the water coming through, which is causing calcification, and then they put in highly corrosive chemicals, and they're pouring it in. Now this highly corrosive chemicals is actually destroying our power stations from inside. So how can we say we want to fix things, and at the same time we put in highly corrosive chemicals to destroy our plants? We are destroying our own asset by putting in poisons, when a biological system actually resolves this issue completely and stops the corrosion.
So just to be clear, Rodney, just be clear, what you're saying is that the solution you've got that is proven would actually remove all this toxic chemicals and just be handled biologically.
Absolutely, no doubt, and I mean that's been proven. And basically what they do is, in this here, we've also further got through this. We have got total failures. I mean, I think there's 17 power stations around, of which 14 reverse osmosis plants were put in. Now, of these reverse osmosis plants that were put in, all of them failed within the first 2 years of operation. And the reason why they failed is because they cannot clean dirty water. They can polish clean water, and because the water is so dirty going into these olive plants, and then they just block up the membranes, and these membranes fail. You just can't keep up with it with the dirty water coming in. So there's nothing wrong with an RO plant, because as a polishing plant afterwards is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But now if you didn't have to deal with the dirty water, you wouldn't have the failure of the RO plants. So and those RO plants cost between 400 and 600 million rand each to supposedly protect our power stations. But despite that, I mean, at Medupi, where I had to go, and I was asked to go and help there after another RO failure, we set up a situation there where we very quickly cleaned all the water and got it through. But that's only after Medupi's had collapsed. Before it was even finished being built, we were already having transformers and pipes blocking up. So it's a process that has been going on forever and is failing and is causing the failures in the power stations. They've got to change the water processes. They can't carry on like this, and we cannot allow them to continue to fund failure.
Look, I was in Greytown in the mid to late 1970s, and back then, I remember we had these little audio tapes, cassettes that you would put into your cassette player and listen to music, and that was the advanced technology of the time. That's back in the 1970s. That's about 50 years ago. Okay. Now, since then we've had CDs, we've had DVDs, we've had USBs. Excuse me. We've had USBs. We've now got videos you can watch online on the internet with music, and we're talking about a technology being used in South Africa when it comes to Eskom that reflects the old audio cassette that we used to use 50 years ago.
Yeah, that's basically what we're talking about here. You know, there's all it is a tweaking. Yes, they've got a instead of just a sludge where they're going to remove it or a filter, they've now got a sludge compressor which costs R1 million. You know, but that's not solving the problem. I mean, that's just taking a bit of the sludge out, but the rest of the water and the contaminant in the water still goes through, and even the amount of sludge that takes it out, it doesn't take all the sludge out. It takes a portion of it out, and then all you've got is you're now sitting with that. What do you do with all that sludge? So you're just compounding the problem. You're not solving anything.
Yeah. So clearly the process is outdated, and there is an agenda behind that. All right, let's move on to the next screen.
Yeah, look, this is a screen, and I've done a map to show you a sewage works with a whole lot of which was rebuilt and is rebuilt and they rebuilt, and all the old infrastructure stands there. Now, some of this infrastructure is still sound in terms of its engineering on the left, and with the digesters on the right are all solid. They are blocked with sewage. They can't be used. I did that on the previous one. I actually showed us cleaning one of those. And what we did is we simply took the current process they got and put together a plan where you don't need electricity, but you can utilize the facility they got there to double the production that is going out. Instead of buying new plants, all you need is a couple of pipes, and you can literally double the production. And in that way, you bring our sewage works back into production capacity. Instead of having our plants being 40 to 200% over capacity, we can bring them back into capacity very, very quickly. And very, you know, with our electricity outages, we don't now have to go and buy all big generators and fuel and everything to run a plant that in fact we should be switching off. So we can utilize what we've got. We have more than sufficient capacity if properly utilized in another way.
Right. And saving water at the power stations.
Well, that's the same thing. That's the same principle applies. We have a huge amount of acid water coming out of a power station, and it all goes out to ash dumps where they are piled up, and there's huge amounts of water. Now, most of that water is simply evaporated out into the air, and so that water is lost. I don't know what the exact volumes or what the numbers are, but there's a huge amount of water. So what I did is we took a power station and we looked at it and we said, right, what we do is in the holding dams where the water is coming from, on the top left-hand side of those drawings, you see six blue tanks. Now that we can treat biologically. And if we treat that biologically, we can move them into the clarifiers, which are normally used to remove organic matter. And we can move that and simply transfer that across, and we can put them straight into the system. Up to the ash dumps, we can then use the sewage works and the wastewater and mix it with the acid water, which then gives the bacteria a food source, stabilizing the pH, and then we can move it directly into the cooling towers. And that way we can save, I don't know how much the actual volume is, but a huge amount of water.
Wow.
And we recycle the water instead of just evaporating all the water that is going through these power stations. At the bottom, this is pure power station. At the bottom was actually our plant that we put in there to remove the oil, and that went straight into the cooling towers. So in our research, we actually designed and put together a complete process, which is a biological, and we don't need a chemical station. Now that we can do quickly, and we could have done it quite quickly, and that would straight away improve the productivity and the costing. I mean, reduce the cost substantially at a power station.
Yeah, well look, I actually saw a report today that Eskom is now recognized as the biggest mafia base of just about any organization in the world, because there's so much corruption going on in Eskom.
Well, right now at Duba Power Station, my IP, people who used to work for me, stole my IP, and they put it in as a presentation, and they put it in to Duba Power Station exactly what you see in front of me here, on the same principle, stating that they actually developed this. Well, they did not develop it, and I don't even think it's going to work, because there are certain processes here that it's showing a quick and simple line, but it's much more complicated than that. But they have simply, while they're working for me, one of my directors, actually, who had signing power, had opened another company in his name while he was working for me, and was actually tendering for contracts with my IP. So this is the type of corruption that you are talking about, and it becomes, this is years of work, and despite the fact that all my stuff is registered at the Department of Science and Technology, there is just no justice, and there is no justice in anything you do in the country. There's no way that you can go to or turn to. It was basically just imploding. I mean, the whole of our, we just look at our Eskom, we look at everything else. It's just imploding because of it.
It's absolutely disgusting. Okay, let me bring up that Kruger National Park video. And Krugersdorp Game Reserve. Sorry, apologies. And I'll let you know. It goes for about 4 minutes. I'll let you know when it's finished.
Okay.
From the dam behind me, which is actually the Hippo Dam, and if you have a look, you can actually see the buildup, the heavy metal buildup, salt, sulfur. It smells absolutely horrific, but if you break it open, you can actually see the layers of all the heavy metal buildup. As the river washes through, it just deposits all the sediment onto the reeds, onto the hippos, onto the dam floor. It's got different layers of different buildups, but in there are heavy metals, it's sulfur, it's all sorts of different sediments from the acid mine water coming into the dam. As a result of the water seeping into this Hippo Dam from the acid mine drainage, there's a lot of heavy metals coming in. There's sulfur, there's different salts, there's all sorts of things that are building up on everything, the bottom of the dam, the reeds, the branches, everything has the sediment buildup, which is directly from the acid water running in with all the stuff that comes with it. It was already a few years ago that they lost all forms of life in the river, the fish, the frogs, the insects. There are 2 hippo that are still here. Unfortunately, they are old hippo, they're territorial bulls. It's almost impossible to move them safely. For the sake of the hippo, we're trying to improve their water quality. They don't have a long life left, but what life they do have left, they are entitled to have a better water quality to live and swim in. And we're hoping, that's why we started the test with EcoTab. And so far, so good. This is our test dam at the Krugersdorp Game Reserve. And when we started out, the pH was reading down to 6, sometimes below 5. It's 3 weeks later. I'm here to test the water again. The last test it was 6.6. There has been rain in the meantime, so more acid water has come in. But let's see if it stabilizes and keeps within a nicer range. Before we started the EcoTab test, what I can tell you is this whole water course, this whole water system was devoid of life. The fish had died, the frogs had died, there were no bugs, there was nothing. The ducks that were here were using this water because they had to, there was no other water source. But now they're actually feeding in the water, and a lot of the other birds have returned. The weavers are back, they're building all the nests over here. So it looks really, really hopeful. And I hope it's going to be successful. This water coming down into the dam comes straight from the river, and the pH is so low from this waterfall, it doesn't even register.
Wow. So the pH in that waterfall is so low that it does not even register.
That's correct. Unfortunately, the presenter, in the beginning, she actually said, looking at 6.5, she should have actually said it was about 1 when we started. And we brought it up to 6.5, even though the pH coming in was at 1. What is interesting, this was all monitored by Professor Hobbs from the CSIR, and I've got letters and etc. from him who basically confirmed these results. And at the same time that this was taking place, with all this chemical waste coming into our rivers and acid mine drainage, Dr. Rex Gorham was asked to oversee a liming station to resolve this issue. And he put it in, and well, it failed completely, as did all the liming stations and all the AME water rehabilitation stations. They put 3 of them around Gauteng, and they all failed as well. Now, every single one, I was told the reason why they failed was because of zommers and people stealing the cables and the electricity and all this to run them. Well, the reality is we know that's a problem. So if we don't need electricity, then why are we spending this type of money on failures which has no chance of succeeding in the first place, when we have sound systems that have been proven? And this was on 50/50. This is one of a number of programs that we have been on, and yet we are still totally ignored as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, look, I was actually on 50/50 in 2007. I launched my book on the Griqua, Children of the Mist, and it was down in the Western Cape, and they came to a special celebration we had with the Griqua people, and I know them very well. They had this sort of graphic moving around behind the guy who was talking. It was so long ago now, but anyway. Look, I know exactly who you're talking about. I think 50/50 have gone, haven't they? They're no longer around.
Unfortunately, they have gone, and it was a great program because it was an environmental program.
Yeah.
And it just showed and exposed some of the anomalies that are now in and facing our wildlife. Our wildlife. I mean, I'm very close as an ex-game manager to wildlife and conservation. And when they took off 50/50, it was really a shame, because they did a great job in promoting wildlife and showing us a whole lot of problems and processes and new concepts. And so it was a very sad day that 50/50 was discontinued.
Yeah. Now, Rodney, look, I've got to say I've got a huge amount of respect for you and what you're trying to achieve. And the problem in South Africa is that the whole system is so corrupted at so many different levels that it's almost impossible, unless you're on the take, to actually do anything. Now, I'm going to, just following up our presentation, or your PowerPoint presentation, ask you about Eskom's failures and acid mine drainage due to water contamination. What impact does that have on the Eskom power plants, and as a result on load shedding?
Well, it's got a massive result, a massive impact, because simply, they've got these oil plants that can't work because of the dirty water they're trying to clean. That it causes the plants to overheat, and the transformers have to be replaced all the time. So you most probably solve 20-30% of your problems before you even start, just by putting a proper water remediation process in place. You might even find it higher than that, and you'll also extend the life of the wastewater of the power stations. And that is a huge matter. Now, South Africa is also a water scarce country, and when we realise that when we calculate half our water is going into failed power stations, then one has got to start asking the questions, where and why, when there are alternative systems, and why is it being blocked? And when you try and talk to senior guys at Eskom, you just get blocked. There's just no ways, and it's all about BE. I was doing plants, I got them going for 8 months, and then the contract was not renewed. And I say, why? And they said, no, because you're basically it's a BE1 project, it's not a BE2 project. We have to have 50% black people and 50 and a white person. So it's all about protecting people and who actually have got no idea of running these plants. They've got absolutely no idea. So as Professor Anthony Turton said, I think it was yesterday on ENCA News, and he was interviewed there. And the only way around this is to bring criminal charges and to lock those people up who are running the plants, because they are the people who are ultimately involved. Now, wherever it is, whether it's a company, whether it's a Eskom power stations, we've got the same problem in our companies, in our food companies, for example. Which where they've got what we call the midnight valve. And these people, I've been talking to them for a long time, get fines of anything from $1 million to $3 million rand a month, which is then cheaper than then putting up a plant. So what they do is that they get all of the guys coming to do the analysis. They'll pay them 50 grand or something like that just to warn them before they do it. Open up the midnight valve, and all that sewage goes into our rivers, close it up, fill it up with fresh water, and all of a sudden, next morning they're all fine. They come do the analysis, and they might get a 10 or 20,000 rand fine instead of 3 or 4 million rand fine. And this is, we have observed this. I've been with this. We've got the very same situation at our airport. Our Tambo, we have food suppliers, and I got an inquiry and from one of our councillors to say, Rod, look, what's happening with the main water going into the Benoni lakes? It is stinking. It is black. So we started looking into it, and we found that the trucks pumping the sewage out from these food factories had to go all the way to Holfontein to go, which is 50 k's, I suppose, 35 k's from here, 40 k's, and you've got to go through a process. It is a toxic dump site, and you get a signed form, and then it comes back. And this truck was doing an amazing 7 loads a day, and we got all of the actual documents that were going through into the toxic, into the waste plant where they were actually dropping off, and they were all signed off, and we got a whole pack of these. And this truck was doing 7 loads a day. Well, in an 8-hour day, to do 7 loads with the truck, loaded, unloaded, transported, move it, was quite phenomenal. And when one looks at the documents that they had to show that they were being paid on, they all had a serial number on the top. It was 0001, 0002, 0003, 0004. So it was clearly fraudulent documents. Wow. And these are just being pumped straight into, or they were going into a warehouse and pumping it into a wastewater stream, which was going straight into the river, not even into a sewage stream. So this is the problem that we are having all over the place, where there are people who were trucks supposedly pumping out septic tanks or these standing toilets, and they go and fetch it all, but where are they dumping it? Is it being dumped? Is it being certified? Or is it being just dumped into our rivers, which is where I suspect it's going to ultimately?
Now look, I've got a question which is, to me, the elephant in the room, Rodney. When are the adults in South Africa going to take over the circus? Because right now you've got a completely corrupted mafia government who are completely screwed up. They're destroying the country, and you've got a huge number of people who've got incredible capabilities that they can offer to the country, who are being pushed into the ground, and a lot of them are now living in squatter camps because of BEE. And as a result of this, you've got a country that is going back to literally pre-1652. I mean, you're moving. Once Eskom goes down and there's no more electricity, I mean, what else can they do to screw up what was once an amazing country?
Well, I do a lot of work in Swaziland, and for me, every time I go there, and I go there often, and every time I go through our border post and I get into Swaziland, I say, wow, thank God, and what a beautiful place. You go there, there's no squatters, there's no beggars, there's no potholes, the electricity works, and there is no racism. You go there, everybody's equal. What a wonderful place. And I really enjoy going to Swaziland and just being able to walk around there, to be there. And, I can see people are going to start investing there. I've been offered, and I'm busy in the process of looking at putting up a plant. And that will happen in Swaziland. I cannot afford to put it up in South Africa. So this investment is a reality in South Africa because of what you are describing. And that is where our danger comes. There's massive jobs losses because people cannot afford to invest in South Africa under current circumstances. And we have to look at alternatives, and whether it's Botswana, whether it's Swaziland, but those people who've got this knowledge, that is what's got to happen. We've got to go where people are interested in actually solving the problem and not just funding the failures and literally stealing from the population, from South Africa, from South Africans and our assets. There's no other way to put it.
Yeah, look, I think the best way to sum up the ANC is that classic footage that I've seen of a basket of bananas put on the middle of the ground, and all of a sudden they're all over it. In a few seconds. It's all gone because they've taken everything, and I don't have to go into who they are, because I think you know what I'm talking about. But that's what's going on in South Africa right now with the ANC. Now let's get back to the discussion here. We're talking about water remediation. What is water remediation?
Well, basically, water remediation is taking all the toxic and the organics out of the water. We should be. Water is a finite. It's finite. It's not an infinite. We drink sewage water all day, every day of our lives, and whether it's comes from taken up in the clouds and then rain down, and we take it out of a river and clean it or whatever, it is still reprocessed wastewater from wherever it comes as a finite product. Now, in the next couple of years, we in South Africa are going to be going again through our typical rain scarce areas. Now, or period, normally it used to be a 7-year period, 7 of rain and 7 of no rain. Now, when we have allowed our reservoirs to start being filled up with sewage, we do not have reservoirs anymore, and we do not have holding capacity. So if we do not have holding capacity, we start putting boils in. Now, in Hollandskraal, they've got boils down there, and yet they have to truck in water to give to the people because they cannot use those boils. Those boils are all so contaminated that you cannot use that water anymore, all coming from Rooibos. Now, there's a power station right there at Rooibos as well. It cannot operate because it cannot operate with that dirty water. So how does one do it? We've got to remediate that water. We've got to get that organic material out, and we've got to get those toxics out. And that can be done, and it can be done with quite quickly and converted quite quickly at a fraction of the cost that is currently happening, or what is planned to happen, put it that way. I mean, the failure that is planned is not going to work. It can't work. It's got no chance of working.
And when we look now at the fact that cholera is now starting to become a problem in South Africa, in places like Hammanskraal, clearly this is all related to the condition of the water that people drink.
Yeah, it is. I'm surprised it's taken so long before the cholera broke out. I expected this to have broken out a couple of years ago already. It's only coming out now. How the people have resisted, first of all, the smell in that area. Like I say, when we go down to the farms, other side of Brits and at Hammanskraal, the stink is just, it's just terrible. And then people, and only people trying to drink water that, even animals will die with that water. For the very fact that it's taken so long to happen is, for me, a big surprise. I thought this was going to happen much sooner.
What I find incredible, Rodney, is that they've got this whole big climate change green agenda. We're going to bring down CO2 transmissions and all this sort of crap. When you look at what's happening in South Africa and the environmental damage that has been perpetrated by this corrupt mafia ANC government, that seems to be okay. Surely there's some agenda going on behind the scenes here, and it's nothing to do with climate change.
Yeah, look, I think climate change internationally, wherever it is, CO2, air is made up of maximum about 17% oxygen, less than 1% of CO2, and the rest is nitrogen.
0.005% CO2 apparently.
That's right. It's such a small amount that
it's bullshit.
It's just. And then I hear, and I saw on the program the other day, that we've got to take out all these guys with trees, and because the trees are drinking the water. Well, trees in forests are net givers, not net takers of water. And wherever the forests have been removed, you have desert, and when you have desert, that's the end of your water. So you've got to create a forest. A forest is where your water comes from, because that's the hydrology and how it works in nature.
Yeah, look, I just think that the people who are pulling the strings at the top are absolutely evil. But anyway, let's go back to water usage at the power stations. A single power station uses a huge amount of water, and so are built near rivers or special holding dams, and are built to accommodate this usage. What happens there?
Well, I mean, that is where, I mean, if you go to any of these power stations, they've got big holding dams, and because of the water that is needed. And particularly when I went there, they had what they call the Crocodile Dam and another dam, which are the two main holding dams, which they pumped into and then used to cool the power station down. And when I got there, I mean, initially I couldn't actually go on the site except to see Google map and to see engineer drawings before I went on and said to them, look, we'll clean it up. And once I've got through all the formalities and the security that I had to go through every time, it took an hour and a half every day that I went there just to get onto the plant. Never mind start working.
Wow.
And have a similar situation just to try and get off the plant again. But as soon as I got there and looked at the dams, and I realized straight away it's coming straight out of the sewage. So what we did is, in the maturation ponds, I put in a single pipe and a pipe process where I blocked off the water from flowing out of the sewage ponds and forced it to the top, like I showed in the earlier picture. And all of a sudden we had that water clean in no time at all, and within 8 months, without an RO plant, the plant was functioning again. And so, to take these dams and these huge water areas, it is not a difficult thing to change them. It's just a matter of understanding the concept and putting it together. I mean, the plant that I'm busy with at the moment, the engineer on site, I mean, once we did the first one and he saw what we were doing, he clicked on straight away. It was, I think we completely converted the reservoirs in the dam. It took us a day. And it was, and within 2 weeks we're already seeing the results from pitch black water. The water is now green on top, and the water coming out is grey. We're just waiting for the analysis of it, and I predict that in another 2 weeks we'll have clean water coming out of there now.
Yeah.
And that's from pitch black water, and also a dam that is 50% compacted solid at the bottom. We'll have that all loosened up and done. So yes, biological process is slow, but it's not that slow. The difference is that it works. And if you look at building one of these monstrosities that they call wastewater treatment plants, they take 4 or 5 years some of them to build. And by the time they're finished being built and the money's all gone missing, they're already under capacity. So it's a fruitless exercise going round and round in a circle.
Now, I used to live in this beautiful little town called Greytown in the northern part of KwaZulu-Natal. Are you familiar with where Greytown is?
Yes, I know Greytown.
Okay, now they've got a lake called Merthley Lake. And just going back to the 1970s, my mother used to be the mayor's personal assistant. She used to look after all his stuff. So I had a good idea of what was happening at Greytown, and Merthley Lake was a beautiful, clean water source for the town. I'm sure things have changed since then. Have you considered actually, targeting more like municipal areas like Greytown and other areas where they've got dams where you could your product could actually help them?
Yeah, look, I mean, I've been to so many of these municipalities, and it's a total waste of time, because the minute you go there, it's not about fixing the water. It's about who's going to get what and how is this going to be divided amongst who. Whether it works or not is totally irrelevant. I went a little while back last year, and I went and I did a trip and investigate all the different sewage works in Natal, and there are none of them working at the moment, and before the big floods came. and all the sewage started running into the sea.
Yeah.
And I looked at all the reason. There was a guy I was partnering with, a black guy who had a company, and then the storm hit. And eventually I went and tied up with another fellow and his partner, and they went down and put it to the MMC down in Natal about sorting this out. And when they asked who was behind it, who's the guy doing this, and my name was mentioned, he said, "Sorry, we're not interested. We're not interested in working." And to me, it's a simple case because I'm well known for refusing to pay out backhand money. I mean, I think commissions are fair, and normal running a business is fair. If you're going to do work, you're entitled to a commission. But to have to have and pay or use companies for money laundering, I'm not on the table. I'm not interested.
Well, I totally support you on that. It's absolutely crazy. No, we're kind of jumping around, but I think that's good because we're covering a few bases at the same time. Now, what is the biological remediation process approved by the Department of Science and Technology at the moment?
Well, the only one that I know of is ours, which is basically aerobic bacteria with a oxygenator. In other words, so we put in oxygen and we create an environment for aerobic bacteria. And that is what is being approved in all the different fields, whether it be an abattoir or because an abattoir is completely different to a dairy, for example.
Yeah.
A dairy is a very complex because that's a lot of fat, and whereas your abattoir is a lot more blood and stuff like that. So we have different challenges in the different types of bioremediation. So each bioremediation process or challenge has first got to find out how to dose, where to dose, and what bacteria that one needs to use to dose. So it's not just something you buy and you throw it in and it does. It's a bacteria enzyme or something like you just throw it in, miracles happen. Well, miracles don't happen like that. It's understanding the actual challenge that you've got, before you start a process. You might use powder only, or you might use a tablet, or you might use a big tablet or a small tablet. You might have a mixture of tablets, and each one have got different bacteria types in there to deal with the specific problem that you've got. And that takes a while to actually to get on top of that and understand what the problems are. Is it a high salt? Is the factory, a clothing factory, which uses a huge amount of salt, for example, to stabilize the coloring on the clothes that they're doing. So you've got a high conductivity. How do you deal with high conductivity in a water? How do we get rid of that salt that is coming out there, so that doesn't get resolved? So every single process we have to go through and study and put it together, and it's not only just we've done a study over a month. It's a study over 8 months, sometimes a year, because you've got all the different in biological situations. You've got spring and summer, and you've got your different temperature zones in winter, dry times, different types of water in different types of different times of the year. So all of those have to be taken, and then the temperature zones. Your temperature zone can vary substantially as to what you can. A dairy, for example, processing plant, the water comes out boiling because they've got to clean these plants out, and they need boiling water to actually wash it 2-3 times, a day to keep it clean. So that water coming out has to be treated as boiling water. And how do we do that? You've got to take it, you've got to bring it in, you've got to stop the energy, you've got to cool the whole situation down, and we do this all without pumps or anything like that. So that took us a while to get that done and sorted out. Acid mine drainage is another one. That takes a while because acid mine drainage that comes out sometimes has no organics in it, or very few organics in it.
Yeah.
So we're going to look at what comes in. How do we put in possibly organics, and how much do we put in order for that? Your ammonias and your nitrates, and how do we take that out, and how do we separate it, and then how do we digest it and get rid of it? So there are a multiplicity of complexities in order to actually get this going. And what I'm trying to do together with SIDA, which is the Swedish Industrial Development Association, have approached me. We're waiting to put up a training school with professors and doctors who are already approached, and who've been studying and been working with me for quite a number of years. Because obviously all the science and stuff, I'm not a scientist or a biological scientist, so I'm very privileged that I have got access to professors who've assisted me over many years in putting this lot together to ensure that what we are doing is correct. So it's not just something that I've got a great team that works with me as well. I've got a young guy, and I want to talk about him because he's a young guy whose father was a senior forester and he was head of forestry up in the Pitcherville area. He was running forestry there, and he passed away when this guy was a young man. And he should have inherited a substantial amount of money, but the money was actually stolen from him basically through the trustees. And he ended up in a squatter camp and then put himself through school. And eventually landed up as one of the top engineers in the country, and he's now 28 and he's qualified all through his own efforts as an engineer. I mean, it's a 2009 or something engineer. I might be under correction as far as that's concerned. Now he's done all my engineering drawings for me over the last couple of years.
Oh.
Now these are the type of guys I've got in my team together with professors. I've got an ex-game ranger friend of mine who we've been working together since 1979.
Yeah.
So it's your team that actually makes it work. It's not me.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of people that I rely on to do this. I mean, my own brother who helps me with a lot of the computer and the computer work. The amount of work he puts in is huge, and it is this where the strength of any organization lies is who are those people you've got around you and within your process. So I think that is where the strength and the science actually comes from, the biological science and putting it together, and what we need to do to go forward, because I believe that there's no point in fighting a fight. There's rather looking for solutions, not for problems. And the political side is one side. If we could only get politicians to say, yes, let's look at something else. Let's look at other experts. Let's not only have one expert. We were told a couple of times when I'm trying to go onto the TV, local television to put our process forward. I was told straight, we've got an expert, and he's the only expert that we talk to. There's nobody else. Well, I disagree with the expert, unfortunately, because he's promoting chemical processes.
Yeah.
And I'm totally anti that, as you can well imagine. So surely there are more than one point of view, and there's more than one concept.
You raise a really interesting point there, because Rodney, when you look at what happened in the last few years, when a certain doctor in America said you got to follow the science, and that's the last thing they were doing. And I'm being a little bit cagey about this because of I know how YouTube works and censorship works, so I'm going to leave it at that. But when we talk about following the science, it involves different perspectives on different issues. If you don't allow different perspectives, you are not following the science, because what you're doing then is you're following a predetermined narrative. And I think that's something people have got to understand. And what you're talking about here is exactly that.
Well, that is quite correct. And I mean, there are certain things that I do agree with him and with the process, but there's some that I absolutely 100% disagree with. There's more than one side to any story, and
Exactly.
It took me years to get our process, through into the Department of Science and Technology and get it confirmed. This is not something that just happens overnight, and yet now you go into the shelf of any of our hardware stores or shops, and you'll see where we've got a bioremediation thing. You just throw it in the water and it solves it, and there's no material safety data sheet behind it. There's no proof of concept, but it is something that sometimes works, and all of a sudden the water is clean.
Yeah.
And the strapper is clean, and so it's worked. But in fact, what you've actually done is caused a much bigger problem. So to allow this certification and putting basically chemicals on a checker shelf where people are desperate and they go shopping. Oh yes, this is what it says it's bioremediation. So they put it on, they take it in. They don't understand. They don't look at the label. They just go and throw it in wherever they want to throw it in, and that just causes problem that we're sitting with at Thomas Clark. And that's where the problem starts, right in our own homes.
Yeah. And for everybody listening, I just want you to understand that if you're in South Africa and you're facing this horrific load shedding that seems to be getting worse and worse, what we're talking about here is the canary in the cage. Okay, it's the canary in the cage because if the water cooling systems don't work properly, then the power plants can't work. And here you've got Rodney, who's got a system that would quickly fix the old historic issues that they've got using the old system very quickly, who's been basically locked out. He's not allowed to participate, not allowed to put in tenders, because as soon as they know who it's coming from, it's locked out because it's all being captured by, and weirdly enough, it's not the ANC, but it's another community in South Africa, and I'm not going to go into that because I'm just going to leave it at that. But yes, the ANC are corrupt, but there are other communities who are feeding from the trough, which is causing huge disadvantage to the wider population in South Africa. Now, you can either respond to that, Rodney, or we'll move on to a couple of closing questions.
Yeah, look, I'd rather not go into who and what and where and how. I think we just got to understand, and South Africa has to stand up, and unfortunately they only understand up once a catastrophe has occurred. And the catastrophe is now occurring. It's right now, and South Africa needs to stand up, and people need to be counted, and we need to get stuck into what works, not what facilitates corruption. So what works, we know what works, what's proven to be working, and that is what we need to do. Your politics I'll try to stay out of, and whoever, I don't belong to any associations or organizations or anything like that, simply because I don't believe in it. That's just what I am.
Yeah. Look, Rodney, I'm going to wrap this up, but I think that just to be clear, just so that people don't misunderstand what you're talking about, talk us through the proof of concept of what you are offering to Eskom. And it's not just to Eskom, you're offering this product to clean out the dams, which are so full of shit. I think you said last time we spoke that Hartbeespoort Dam, you think, well, hey, this is a huge dam, it must have a whole lot of water, but then about 40% of it at the bottom is actually crap. It's all the sewage sitting at the bottom, and then you've got this piece of water which is okay, and then you've got the water hyacinth on top, and also the other elements related to the water hyacinth. So the actual fresh water in a huge dam like Hartbeespoort Dam in Gauteng is actually a tiny percentage of what it could be. But because they refuse to take a biological option to sort it out, and they keep on throwing chemicals after the same problem, all they're doing is they're just making it worse. Over to you.
Yeah, look, I think we'll just make it clear. I mean, hard it is they're not throwing the chemicals in. The chemicals are coming in via wastewater treatment plants and upstream. What I'm trying to just change is the process. The process that we've got is wrong, and the process is just it's entrenched, and it is totally unviable. I mean, I think Royal sewage works just in the last 14 years has been upgraded 2 or 3 times. I'm a member of what we call the MAPS Forums meeting, and in February the Department of Water and Sanitation were there, and they were questioned and said, well, why has the rehabilitation of Royal stopped? And the answer was, well, we caught the guy that instead of using the money to fix basically the plant, they went on Christmas, and they had a nice Christmas wherever they went, and now they need more money to do it, and we refuse to do it until they've shown us what in fact they've done. And this is where the problem comes, is that these people who are feeding off the trough, and they're not doing the job. And you know, when it's openly admitted in that, and then the sad part was that the chairman or chairlady of the forum actually turns around and said, well, just give them the money, we've got to get this resolved. And that's through pure desperation of to try and get something and get it fixed. So people are almost indoctrinated, saying it doesn't matter if they steal, let's just get the job done. It doesn't matter if there's corruption, just let's get the job done. We are desperate for it. You know, we're being held almost with a gun to our head. You either feed the trough or you don't get it fixed. And that is where the problem lies. And you know, we've got to start standing up to and being manning up to this type of nonsense. You know, it's to me it's just reverse racism, and there's open corruption. That's all it is.
Yeah. Well, let's face it. The ANC is a cancer. C-A-N-C. E-R. But okay. So just in wrapping up this live stream, Rodney, first off, I just want to thank you for coming back and chatting to us again about Eskom and how you guys could actually help people to, well, the whole population of South Africa. If Eskom started incorporating your biological solutions instead of the antiquated chemical solutions, which are kind of fixated through vested interests, the load shedding might be reduced dramatically. I'm going to ask you to just talk on that and anything else you'd like to as we wrap up. Over to you.
Just to wrap up, you know, the thing is that what we've done at the power station has been proven. You know, there's no doubt about it, and that is even in their own presentations. So why continue on failures? I have no idea. You know, so you know, to wrap it up, we just need a new process. The processes that have been used have failed. They failed the country. They failed like they have failed at every other stage throughout the last 20, 30 years. And we need a new clean slate. We need new processes. We need new things, but we don't need massive capital. There's this whole thing of we can't do anything unless we borrow another R1 trillion or 5 trillion rand or put the country even further into debt. We can do that with very little cash, and in fact we have most of the infrastructure already in place. We don't need massive new plants. Cape Town, I see, is now going to build a whole new wastewater treatment plant. I mean, they're a perfect example. This is right in the DA country, and right in the middle of the DA country, they still don't want to talk because why? Again, there are people there who've got vested interest, and they're going to now put up. And it's all over the news, and well done, the DA. They're going to put this new wastewater treatment plant in. And what's it? It's exactly based on what has failed, and this is just another spin on a failure. That's all it is.
And that's taxpayers' money.
Yeah, it's our taxpayers' money, and our children's children will still be paying off the money that's being spent on total wasteful expenditure.
So this is gross negligence by the Democratic Alliance in the Western Cape.
Well, it's all the municipalities. That's an idea. I mean, the ANC, they control here in Gauteng. Wherever it is, the politicians are just feeding off the trough. It doesn't matter what the political party is. They are not interested in solving the issue, solving the problem.
Yeah.
They are being blocked. There are many people and many councillors within those concepts who are fighting to do it. And I honestly feel that the people of South Africa should criminally charge those irresponsible, and they should be jailed. And like Thomas Crow, the people upstream who are in charge of that should be charged. They should be put in jail. They should be charged with attempted murder. Or murder. I mean, that's really what it is at the end of the day. That's pure negligence. And I think the only way we're going to solve this is to take the people in charge and criminally charge them. You know, if there was not another option, then I'd say they've got a right to say we're doing the best we can with the only options that are there. But when it's been proven that there is an alternative option and they still refuse to do that, then that person in charge should go to jail. You know, instead of blaming everybody else.
Yeah,
So
look, I can think of a lot of Democratic Alliance councillors who should be behind bars, but sadly at the moment they're not. But anyway, all right, Rodney. Just to wrap up, is there something you'd like to say to people, just that we might not have discussed, but you'd like to get a message through?
Look, you know, I just think all I can say is be aware of what's going on. Look at things, look and see what you're looking at. Don't just look and I find most people look at something and they don't see what they're looking at. They don't question. They just get led. I mean, the news. Oh, did you see that on the news? And they post these things, but they don't query what they're looking at. They just look at it and say, oh, this must be true, and then off it goes. It's a typical WhatsApp thing. Oh, you see this, you see that. Question and be aware of what you're actually doing. Look, you do your own research. Find out about what you're doing. Don't just be follow like sheep, because that is what is happening. I mean, we've got to capture television, SABC, and they will tell you what they want you to know. And don't just be followed, and don't just take for granted what is on the TV or YouTube or Facebook or one of these things.
Yeah.
Ask the questions, look at it and ask the questions. You know, we're going to solve the license. We're just going to kill it off with bacteria. Well, that's fantastic. You killed it off, very successful, but then what? What happens when it drops at the bottom? Don't just take things for granted. Yes, we can kill it with chemicals. Oh, that's got to be stopped, it's a chemical. But whether it kills it with the chemical or the bioremediation process, it's still going to drop into the bottom of our water. What are you going to do about it then? How are you going to remediate it then? You know, people come along and say, oh, we've got something with a nanotechnology, we've got some new petri dish thing that we've now found out, but where's the proof of concept? Where have they done it before? Where are they going to do this? You know, they've come up with all these fancy things, but nobody's holding them accountable to what they're actually doing. So where is the accountability? If we're going to do something, charge those. If they fail, you've got to take liability. It's as simple as that. So if you want to make a statement, you want to do something, you get these contracts, liability has to be there. The justice system has to come out. You made that statement, you signed it, you've got the contract, you've been paid, then you must hold liability for it. You can't just sit there, no, we must do this, we must do that, and then stand back and have no liability. So I think liability has to take a place if we're going to move forward.
Yeah, look, I totally get what you're saying, and sadly in a country like South Africa, where you've got a police minister like Becker Cele, you know, you can understand why the country is in so much trouble. It is very sad, and I'm not sure what's going to pull it out of the fire, but I'm sure something will. And I'm just going to reflect on what Sina van Rensburg, you must have heard of Sina van Rensburg.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And he said that when the United Kingdom collapses, it completely implodes. That's when the new Boer nation will actually revitalize and rebuild. And it's a very interesting. It's one of the things we discuss on Loving Life TV. I've got a series of recitals that I'm putting up about Sina van Rensburg, and some of his prophecies were quite extraordinary.
Yeah. Look, I haven't actually followed him at all, but I know of him, and I know that he's made a lot of prophecies. And
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we're basically going back to the Volkswagen with the.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're going back to the 1650s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really where we're heading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But look, it's the ones who dig down and prep and make sure that they're going to look after their families and their communities who are going to actually survive. Because I think this ANC government it's all about me when it comes to being a member of parliament and with the ANC, and everything else is just noise.
Yeah, I think just to finish off, I'll say, in so many things and with so many issues going back for so many years in South Africa, I found in one of my, where I was ran a prisoner war camp in Southwest Africa, and we never locked anybody up. There was nothing locked up, and the most important thing that we did, when you get and you are traumatized to such an extent from a battlefield, hatred, there's no place. Kindness was the most amazing thing, and your communication with the prisoners through kindness and not through hatred was incredible. And I went through that process, and years later I was actually flown to Angola and thanked by the Angolan government for our kindness that was shown, particularly to one of the ministers who were captured and kept in one of our camps up there and released eventually. But that is another story. But the concept of kindness as opposed to hatred is what we need to actually evolve and develop here, because that is where I believe our country can be rehabilitated, and our water and everything else.
Yeah. Well, look, I think the point you raised is critical to the future of South Africa. And I think the problem is you've got a feral president, Ramaphosa, who is now actually dumbing down on black economic empowerment when the country is falling apart. And I see that, I think it was a Democratic Alliance who's saying that something like 1 million jobs are going to be lost in the next 5 years because of the new black economic empowerment laws that the ANC are bringing in. I mean, it's not even cutting off your nose to spite your face. It's just shooting yourself in the back, isn't it?
Well, there's two things that have caused the collapse of South Africa, and that is Qaeda deployment, and there's no doubt about it, because that is total racism, reverse racism, and it's based on hatred. Hatred never works, doesn't matter where you go.
Yeah. Alrighty. Rodney, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and look, we're going to have a chat to you about the Angolan experience one of these days. But
yeah, there's a few others, yeah.
Look, I have to say that you are a remarkable man. I meet a lot of remarkable people, and I think your solutions for the water problems, which would also help Eskom, and load shedding, they're no-brainers, and yet you've got this. It's like having a blockage in your system. Your tummy doesn't work properly. You've got a blockage, and it's constipation, and da. And I think it's all related around, as you said, vested interests. And I think this is something that's got to be looked at. I think state capture, yeah, that's really bad, but vested interests right now are the major issue.
Yeah, no, I agree.
All right, buddy. Take care. And we'll chat again soon. Cheers, mate.
All right. Cheerio. Bye.
Okay, guys, that was Rodney Genricks, and we were talking about his solutions for water in South Africa. And it's quite extraordinary when you've got cholera breaking out across parts of Gauteng and Limpopo, and that's all obviously water-driven disease. The ANC and vested interests don't want to know anything about Rodney's technology because there's no money in it for them. What happened to looking after the population? Well, apparently that doesn't matter. But that is what is happening in South Africa, sadly. I'm going to go out with one of our favorite songs, Op Ons Rots. And don't forget, tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Johannesburg time, we'll be having another live stream. And I just want to say in closing, thanks to the mods for looking after the side chat. Okay, let's get Op Ons Rots on, and I bid you good night.
Ons loop hand aan hand op goue warm sand, so baie wat ek wil hee, so baie dit brand. Ek staan op my rots met golwe wat bots. Ons het geen vrees, want hy is in beheer. Ons sien al die planne van goddeloze mannen. Ons weet hulle gaan nie nie, dis geskryf soos een tyd. Ons sal wen, aanhou want hy is in beheer. Die winde waai sterk, dis krachte wat werk. Die gevoel in my hart, dis vrees wat wil brand. Ons boere met trots, met my hand in my bors. Ons ken geen vrees, want hy is in beheer. Ons sien al die planne van goddeloze mannen. Ons weet hulle gaan nie dis geskryf soos een tyd. Ons sal wen, aanhou want hy is in beheer. Ons sien wat gebeur, die leer sal ons die